Greetings and welcome to the Reparenting Daily podcast. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into reparenting, exploring all of the tools and resources that you'll need to help you along your journey. This podcast is divided into 3 sections. The first is a daily reading. The second is a discussion of the reading followed by suggested journal prompts. And the last section is a peaceful meditation for closing. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from whenever and wherever you're joining us today. I'm so glad that you're here as we continue on this journey of self-expansion and growth. If this is your first time, welcome. Before we dive in, a quick reminder. Like, share, and subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Your support here helps spread the word and grow this community of self-reparenting. Now for a few updates. First, I'm excited to introduce our Patreon community, where for a small monthly fee, you can join us for 3 weekly reparenting support meetings. Sundays, we have a guided meditation for emotional grounding. On Tuesdays, we have a book club discussion for deeper discussions and growth. And on Thursdays, we have open topic conversations for real-time support on any topics that may come up. You can find all of the details about what's included in this community by going to the Reparenting Daily website and checking out the community tab. In addition, we now have a WhatsApp support group, a global network of fellow travelers available anytime you need encouragement, guidance, or simple connection. This is just one of the many ways we're building a strong, supportive space for your reparenting journey. The next announcement is that I've just released my first few books. The first is the Reparenting Daily Journal, a structured 365-day guide to help you work through reparenting day by day. Starting in 2025, each month focuses on a key theme with weekly sub-themes. The Reparenting Daily podcast episodes align with the journal, making it an interactive and immersive experience to help you stay focused and ensure real progress this year. Now for the next announcement, I'm thrilled to introduce Fairy Tales for Reparenting Daily, a collection of 3 books inspired by Jungian analysis, mythology, philosophy, psychology, and most importantly, the work of Marie-Louise von Franz. These short, simple stories are designed to help you reconnect with your inner child and experience healing through storytelling. What makes these books unique? Well, at the end of each story, there's a deep dive analysis exploring its themes, explored by journal prompts to help you reflect on how these lessons relate to your personal journey. All of these books are now available on Amazon, so go ahead and take a look and support this project. Reparenting is a journey of growth, iterative change, and continuous improvement. Much like nurturing the bonsai tree, it requires patience, care, consistency, and attention. Thanks for being here and supporting this work, and for committing on your journey of self-expansion. Now, without further ado, let's dive into today's practice. Today's reading is The Ethics from Spinoza. This work is from the 17th century, so you can find the link to the work in the public domain in the show notes. You can also find the link to purchase the book directly yourself. This is an outstanding piece of philosophy that, quite frankly, I came across way too late in my life. Spinoza's Ethics is up there with the Nietzsche's on the genealogy of morals. And it's a different take, but it's such an empowering work that I highly recommend that if you don't even read it in its entirety, perhaps you check out some summaries, because the ideas here are amazing. Spinoza was a scientist and a mathematician, so his approach and his logic is quite grounded in scientific reasoning, and the way he explains and provides justifications and analogies is very inspiring. So I do encourage you to check that out. And just as a reminder, we're in May, and the theme for this week is emotional regulation. We're in week 3, which is May 15th until the 21st. And the theme for this week is expressing emotions healthily. Now let's look at the Ethics by Spinoza. Today we're reading from part 3, on the origin and nature of the emotions. Most writers on the emotions and on human conduct seem to be treating rather of matters outside of nature than of natural phenomenon following nature's general laws. They appear to conceive man to be situated in nature as a kingdom within a kingdom. For they believe that he disturbs rather than follow nature's order, that he has absolute control over his actions, and that he is determined solely by himself. They attribute human infirmities and fickleness not to the power of nature in general, but to some mysterious flaw in the nature of man, which according to them bemoan, deride, despise, or as usually happens, abuse. He who succeeds in hitting off the weakness of the human mind more eloquently or more acutely than his fellows is looked upon as a seer. Still, there has been no lack of very excellent men to whose toil and industry I confess myself much indebted, who have written many noteworthy things concerning the right way of life, and have given much sage advice to mankind. But no one, so far as I know, has defined the nature and strength of the emotions and the power of the mind against them for their restraint. I do not forget that the illustrations of Descartes, though he believed that the mind has absolute power over its actions, strove to explain human emotions by their primary cause, and, at the same time, to point out a way by which the mind might attain to absolute dominion over them. However, in my opinion, he accomplishes nothing beyond the display of acuteness of his own great intellect, as I will show in the proper place. For the present, I wish to revert to those who would rather abuse or deride human emotions than understand them. Such persons will doubtless think it strange that I should attempt to treat of human vice and folly geometrically, and should wish to set forth with rigid reasoning those matters which they cry out against as repugnant. To reason, frivolous, absurd, and dreadful. However, such is my plan. Nothing comes to pass in nature which can be set down to a flaw therein. For nature is always the same, and everywhere one and the same is her efficiency and power of action, that is, nature's laws and ordinances, whereby all things come to pass and change from one form to another, are everywhere and always the same, so that there should be one and the same method of understanding the nature of all things, whatsoever, namely, through nature's universal laws and rules. Thus the passions of hatred, envy, anger, and so on, considered in themselves, follow from the same necessity and efficacy of nature. They answer to certain definite causes, through which they are understood, and possess certain properties as worthy of being known as the properties of anything else, whereof the contemplation in itself affords us delight. I shall, therefore, treat the nature and strength of emotions according to the same method as I employed heretofore in my investigations concerning God and the mind. I shall consider human actions and desires in exactly the same manner, as though I were concerned with lines, planes, and solids. Definition 1. By an adequate cause, I mean a cause through which its effect can be clearly and distinctly perceived. By an inadequate or partial cause, I mean a cause to which, by in itself, effect cannot be understood. Definition 2. I say that we act when anything takes place either within us or externally to us, whereof we are the adequate cause, that is, by foregoing definition, When through the nature of something takes place within us or externally to us, which can, through our nature alone, be clearly and distinctly understood. On the other hand, I say that we are passive as regards something when that something takes place within us or follows from our nature externally, we being only the partial cause. Definition 3. By emotion, I mean the modifications of the body, whereby active power of said body is increased or diminished, aided or constrained, and also the ideas of such modifications. If we can be the adequate cause of any of these modifications, then I call the emotion activity. Otherwise, I call it passion, or state wherein the mind is passive. Postulates. Postulate 1. The human body can be affected in many ways, whereby its power of activity is increased or diminished, and also in other ways which do not render its power of activity either greater or less. Postulate 2. The human body can undergo many changes and, nevertheless, retain the impression or traces of objects, and, consequently, the same images of things. In the propositions, proposition number 1. Our mind is in certain cases active, and in certain cases passive. Insofar as it has adequate ideas, it is necessarily active. And insofar as it has inadequate ideas, it is necessarily passive. Proof. In every human mind, there are some adequate ideas and some ideas that are fragmentary and confused. Those ideas which are adequate in the mind are adequate also in God, inasmuch as he constitutes the essence of the mind. And those which are inadequate in the mind are likewise, by the same corollary, adequate in God, and not inasmuch as he contains in himself the essence of the given mind alone, but as he, at the given time, contains the mind of other things. Again, from any given idea, some effect must necessarily follow. Of this effect, God is the adequate cause, not inasmuch as he is infinite, but inasmuch as he is conceived as affected by giving the idea. But of that effect, whereof God is the cause, inasmuch as he is affected by an idea which is inadequate in a given mind, of the effect, I repeat, the mind in question is the adequate cause. The corollary to Proposition 11 of Part 2. Therefore, our mind, insofar as it has adequate ideas, is in certain cases necessarily active. That was our first point. Again, whatsoever necessarily flows from the idea which is adequate in God, not by virtue of his possessing in himself the mind of one man only, but by virtue of his containing together with the mind of that one man the minds of other things also. Of such an effect, the mind of the given man is not adequate, but only partial. Thus the mind, inasmuch has inadequate ideas, is in certain cases necessarily passive. That was our second point. Therefore our mind. And the corollary, hence it follows that the mind is more or less liable to be acted upon in proportion as it possesses inadequate ideas, and contrariwise, more or less active in the proportion as it possesses adequate ideas. Thank you. And that's the end of this first section, and we only went up to the proposition number 1. So please do check out the reading in the show notes so you can continue. Thank you. Welcome back, welcome back. In part 3 of Ethics, Spinoza lays out a revolutionary understanding of our emotions, defining them not as irrational disruptions, but as natural states arising from our interactions with external causes. He sees emotions or effects as changes in the body that increase or decrease our power of acting. According to Spinoza, we are not passive victims of our emotion. Rather, they follow logical patterns tied to our desires for self-preservation and flourishing. For example, joy increases our capacity to act, while sadness diminishes it. These emotional shifts are part of the same deterministic system as everything else in nature, and understanding their causes is the first step towards mastering them. This view reframes emotional regulation not as suppression, but as gaining knowledge about our emotions, why they arise, and how they are tied to thoughts and bodily states. Spinoza teaches that cultivating reason and understanding the true causes of our emotion, we develop emotional freedom. Instead of being at the mercy of our feelings, we become active participants, shaping our emotional lives. This connection, the, this connects directly to healthy emotional expression. The more aware and rationally engaged we are with our emotions, the more clearly and calmly we can express them without being overwhelmed or reactive. As we go into the journal prompts today, number 1, think of a strong, recent emotional reaction. What external event caused it, and what desire or fear might have been at its roots? Number 2, how does understanding why you feel something help you express it more clearly and calmly? And number 3, what's one emotional pattern you notice repeating in your life? What would Spinoza say is the cause of this pattern? And how might you begin to shift it through understanding, or might I add, reframing? That's it for today. As always, thanks you for being here. Please take care of yourself and be well. Welcome back. Welcome back. Now, this is the third and final section of the daily podcast. This is your silent meditation. Please go ahead and find a space where you can be comfortable and undisturbed, where you can relax and spend some time with yourself for this 10-minute silent meditation. You can choose to be sitting, standing, lying down, or in whatever position makes you comfortable today. Take a moment to simply be with yourself. Focus on your breath and gently connect with each part of your body. If thoughts arise, don't let them overwhelm you. Just observe them without attachment. Imagine them as leaves drifting down atop a river, passing by without needing your engagement. Stay present, grounded, and open to this moment, no matter what time you are listening and practicing this meditation. Namaste.